You're not distracted because your attention span is broken. You're distracted because your brain learned that discomfort can be escaped in under 2 seconds. That tiny moment when work becomes mentally heavy. You reach for your phone. That awkward pause while writing something important. Suddenly you need to check notifications. You open one tab, then another, then another. And somehow an hour disappears while your actual life sits untouched in the background, like a paused movie. The strange part is, you still care. You still want to become focused, disciplined, clear-headed, but every night ends the same way. Too mentally exhausted to think, too guilty to relax, too overstimulated to sleep properly. So you scroll until your brain goes numb, then wake up promising yourself tomorrow will feel different. And this is where things quietly start falling apart. Because most people think focus is about working harder. It isn't. Focus is emotional. That's the part nobody explains. The reason you avoid deep work isn't laziness, it's exposure. Real focus forces you to sit still long enough to confront your own mind. No dopamine spikes, no quick relief, no constant novelty feeding your nervous system every few seconds. Just you, and the uncomfortable reality of what you've been avoiding, that project you keep postponing, that skill you keep saying you'll learn when life calms down. That silent fear that maybe you're wasting your potential while watching everyone else move forward online. You don't notice it immediately. At first, distraction feels harmless. A few short videos, a few refreshes, a few mental breaks. But the brain adapts fast. And eventually, silence itself starts feeling uncomfortable. You sit down to focus for 10 minutes, and suddenly your body feels restless. Your brain starts bargaining. Maybe clean your room first. Maybe check messages first. Maybe research more before starting. It sounds productive. That's why it's dangerous. Some people procrastinate loudly. Others procrastinate intelligently. And intelligent procrastination is brutal because it feels responsible while quietly destroying momentum. You convince yourself you're preparing, but deep down, you know you're hiding. And the weird part is, you probably already know exactly what matters most in your life right now. You know the conversation you've been avoiding, the work you should finish, the habit destroying your energy, the thing you keep pretending isn't that serious. But attention has become fragmented. Not because you're weak, because modern life profits from fractured focus. Every app competes for your nervous system. Every notification interrupts thought before it deepens, and after enough interruption, your brain forgets what sustained attention even feels like. That's when the real problem begins, because once you lose the ability to focus deeply, you slowly lose connection with yourself too. You stop hearing your own thoughts clearly. You react more than reflect. You consume more than create. You mistake stimulation for fulfillment, and eventually you start living in permanent mental static. Half present everywhere, fully present nowhere. You can feel this late at night sometimes. When the noise finally slows down. You're lying in bed staring at the ceiling after hours of scrolling, and for a few uncomfortable seconds, clarity slips through. You realize how disconnected you've become from your own life. Not dramatically, quietly. You still function, still go to work, still answer texts, still laugh at memes. But internally, your attention is scattered across 1,000 tiny fragments. And scattered attention creates scattered identity. Because whatever consistently controls your attention eventually controls your life. That sentence sounds dramatic until you notice how true it is. Look at your days honestly. What actually receives your best energy? Not your goals, not your future, not your relationships. Algorithms, notifications, random stimulation, tiny digital interruptions shaping your mood, behavior, patience, memory, and emotional state without permission. And this changes everything once you fully see it. Because now focus stops being a productivity trick. It becomes self-respect. The strange thing about real focus is that it doesn't immediately feel powerful. At first it feels empty, quiet, almost boring. Because your brain has spent years adapting to noise, constant switching, constant stimulation, constant interruption. So when you finally sit down and remove the distractions, your nervous system panics a little. You reach for your phone without thinking. You open tabs you don't need. You suddenly remember random tasks that felt completely unimportant 5 minutes ago. And this is the part most people misunderstand. They think focus means forcing the mind into submission. It doesn't. It means retraining the nervous system to tolerate depth again. That's a completely different thing. Because the real battle was never productivity. It was emotional avoidance. And once you see that, your relationship with work starts changing. You stop asking, "How do I force myself to focus?" and start asking, "What am I escaping every time I lose focus?" That question changes everything. Because sometimes you aren't avoiding the work itself. You're avoiding the feeling attached to it, the possibility of failing, the fear of not being good enough, the discomfort of trying seriously. At first, distraction protects you from those emotions, but eventually, it also protects you from growth. And this creates a quiet kind of suffering nobody talks about. You become mentally exhausted without doing anything deeply meaningful. That's why endless scrolling feels so draining. Your brain stays active for hours, without experiencing real satisfaction. Because shallow stimulation consumes energy without creating fulfillment. You can feel this. After entire days online, you were busy. Your mind was occupied constantly. But emotionally, you still feel empty, still restless, still disconnected from yourself. And here's the brutal part. The more fragmented your attention becomes, the harder meaningful life starts feeling. Conversations become shorter. Patience disappears faster. Reading feels harder. Thinking deeply becomes uncomfortable. Even joy starts feeling weaker because your nervous system gets conditioned for intensity instead of presence. Normal life begins feeling too slow. That's terrifying when you really think about it. Because eventually you stop experiencing reality directly. You only experience stimulation. And this is where the focus rule changes everything. Your attention shapes your identity. Not occasionally, constantly. Whatever you repeatedly give your attention to becomes your emotional environment. Which means every distraction is training something. Every scroll shapes patience. Every interruption shapes thinking. Every moment of avoidance shapes character. People think identity changes through massive decisions. Most of the time, it changes through repeated attention patterns no one notices. And suddenly you understand why you felt disconnected lately. Why your mind feels noisy even when life is quiet. Why sitting alone with your thoughts feels strangely uncomfortable. You trained your brain to fear stillness. But here's the beautiful part nobody tells you. Attention can heal too. The moment you begin protecting your focus, your inner world starts reorganizing itself. Slowly. At first almost invisibly. You notice you can think longer without reaching for stimulation. You notice conversations feeling deeper again. You notice small moments becoming emotionally clearer. Your mind stops feeling constantly crowded. And then something unexpected happens. You start trusting yourself again. Because every time you keep a promise to your own attention, self-respect quietly returns. Not loudly, not dramatically. Quietly. You finish one difficult task without escaping, then another. You sit with discomfort a little longer. You stop abandoning yourself every time boredom appears. And eventually your nervous system realizes something important. Discomfort isn't danger. Depth isn't punishment. Silence isn't empty. That realization changes your entire life. Because now focus stops feeling restrictive. It starts feeling freeing. For the first time in a long time, your attention belongs to you again. And maybe that's what you've actually been searching for this whole time. Not better productivity, not perfect discipline, not some magical morning routine. Control over your own mind. The ability to decide what deserves your energy instead of constantly reacting to whatever screams the loudest. That's real focus, not intensity. Direction. And honestly, most people never experience it anymore. Their attention gets scattered for so long they forget what mental clarity even feels like. They confuse exhaustion with effort, noise with meaning, consumption with progress. But deep down, you already knew something was wrong. That's why this hit you. Because some part of you is tired of living fragmented, tired of half-finishing things, tired of escaping into stimulation every time life becomes uncomfortable. Tired of feeling mentally crowded, but emotionally unfulfilled. And maybe the shift begins here, not with some giant transformation, but with one quiet decision: to stop feeding every distraction that asks for your attention, to stop abandoning difficult moments immediately, to sit still long enough to hear your own thoughts again. That's the focus rule nobody explains. Your attention is your life. Where it goes, you go. And if this felt a little too real, maybe that's the part you shouldn't ignore.